Welcome to Retail Crime Uncovered, the go-to podcast for anything and everything retail crime related. I'm your host, Professor Emmeline Taylor. A couple of weeks ago, I was lucky enough to be in New York for the NRF Big Show. And while I was there, it was a fantastic whirlwind few hours, couple of days. And while I was there, I met with some fantastic minds from across the retail industry. You know who you are, and thank you for sharing some thoughts, ideas, even a beer with me during that time. Now, one of the people that I met was a senior officer with the NYPD. And he said to me, I see you've decriminalised theft over in the UK. How's that going for you? And at first, I sort of laughed. But this has really stayed with me, actually, over the past couple of weeks. And I thought I'd do a little bit of digging in terms of the data to see whether it would support such a bold assertion as that. And sadly, the figures would support that the police and criminal justice system has lost grip on acquisitive crime. Last year, just 4.4% of all theft offences resulted in someone being charged. In terms of shoplifting, it's slightly more positive. 14% of reported shoplifters are charged. But before we feel that we're not doing too badly, flip that round. 86% of reported shoplifters were not charged. But we also know that we've got a problem with chronic underreporting of acquisitive crime, of theft, and particularly shop theft. Just 340,000 incidents reported in that year, the same year that the BRC, the British Retail Consortium, estimated 8 million offences. So that's just 4.2% of shop thefts being reported. So looking at those figures, I guess the odds really are in favour of the shoplifter, and maybe theft has been decriminalised. So in today's episode, I really want to focus again on prolific local offenders. We've had quite a lot of attention on ORC, organised retail crime, and really trying to get to grips with what the definition of ORC is or should be. But I think a key aspect of it is that these criminals are networked and mobile. So they target multi-site locations across a particular region or country. Local offenders are just that. They're local. They stay within a largely defined area, a town, a city. They know the location. They get to know where they can and cannot get away with their crimes, and they build up a network of people that they can quickly sell their goods onto. And experts in the field, from the industry and police themselves, talk about the Pareto principle, or better known as the 80-20 rule, that 80% of offences are being committed by 20% of offenders. This cohort of repeat offenders steal persistently, at volume, and often treat theft as their full-time occupation. They work hard at it. They want to make more money for whatever purpose it is that they're stealing for. But they weren't always like this. They didn't just get out of bed one day and start being a prolific thief. It's usually a slippery slope, and one that can often start in childhood. Shoplifting is usually the first offence that a young person engages in as they're testing boundaries, challenging authority. We also know it can be a cry for help for some people, which goes some way to explain why it's not just the poor and down and outs that steal, but also celebrities and politicians. But we also know too commonly that it is linked to that first naive foray into a life of drugs and addiction. And if only there could have been an early intervention to steer someone's path in a different direction. So today I meet with Lisa. She's a former prolific shoplifting offender. And I first met Lisa several years ago whilst I was doing an evaluation of the offender to rehabilitation programme in Birmingham, West Midlands Police. And she tells me about that journey. She had a fantastic career. She was working at a high-end hairdressers for several years. Things were looking good for her. She had a partner. She had a nice life. But she started stealing whilst having a full-time job. And then that slippery slope started for her and things started to spiral out of control. I'll be honest, I didn't find this interview easy. I wanted to like Lisa. She's lovely. I'd met her before. She's smart. She's funny. She's engaging. She's had some really heart-wrenching experiences that still, the past still continues to impact her future. But at the same time, when she talks about the level of offending that she committed, I also can't help but sympathise with the shop workers, the security guards and the police. All of the activity that she generated and how challenging that must have been for the stores in the local vicinity in which she frequently targeted. Now, the reason to return to offenders is not just to talk about the difficulties, the challenges that some of these people have, but it's really to push forward in terms of now is the time to have a change in policing, in the criminal justice response to offenders, if we want to see a long-lasting reversal to the epidemic of theft that we have seen in recent years, not just in the UK, but in other countries. And I'll just leave you with one statistic. We all work very closely with ROIs and having to convince people who hold the purse strings that there is a return on investment. Well, according to Public Health England, every pound that is spent on drug services saves £4 to the public purse. Now, that's certainly an ROI that I would be happy with.
So I'm joined now by Lisa, who is a ex-offender. She was previously a prolific and persistent shoplifter and has successfully been through the offender to rehabilitation programme in Birmingham. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, okay.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. It's great to see you again. So tell me a little bit about, when did you first commit your very first offence? Can you cast your mind back?
My first offence, I was about 18. I used to work in the hairdressers. Used to work at Tony and Guy. And I started using heroin. And on my lunch hour, I used to go out. I used to go to House of Fraser, which was known as Rackham's back then.
Yeah.
And I started shoplifting on my lunch hour. And then go back to work like nothing had happened.
Wow.
And then I carried on it until it got to the point that I got caught in Rackham's, and they had their own sort of holding cells where you waited for the police to arrive.
Right.
All I can describe it as is like 2 cages next door to each other.
Okay.
And the one time that I'd gone in there, I had a pair of pliers on me, which I used to use to get the alarms off.
Right.
And I knew that obviously if the police caught me with those, I'd be getting done for another offence.
Because you'd be going equipped. Okay, yeah.
So it's premeditated, basically. So I remember I got this vivid memory of it, and I just stood on the chair and I put the pliers on top of the cage. And there was quite a few up there as well, which was weird.
Oh, really? So that's, people knew that's the way to like...
I knew it was out the way then, and obviously when I got searched and stuff, I wouldn't have had nothing on me, so...
And so did anything come of that? Were you arrested?
No, nothing come of the pliers.
Okay. And then what happened subsequently to that?
I lost my job.
Yeah.
I was there for 6 years.
Wow. And it's a good hairdressers, isn't it? You've got a good job. You've been holding it down.
I worked really hard, but my drugs was more important than anything else. I got a daughter as well who was... my elder daughter, she's coming up to 15.
Yeah.
She lives with my mum at the moment. And but that sort of enabled me to continue my shoplifting. I'd take her to nursery and I'd shoplift all day.
Wow.
But going back to when I started shoplifting, I lost my job and then it just got worse.
And so you lost your job because of the drug
because of
addiction.
drugs, yeah.
How did you first start getting involved with the drugs?
I first started using drugs, but it was only weed when I was 13. That progressed to ecstasy and acid. I was at school. Just used to do it now and again. Like I suppose anybody used to drink on the after school in the evenings on the street with all your mates. But I had to take it one step far, and I'd be the one that would pissed and all that. And then I first took heroin at 17, and I met a lad I worked with. We got together, and I just seen him smoking something kind of piece of oil, and I was really naive didn't know what heroin was. And I asked him if I could have a bit. He said no at first, but then I ended up trying it, and I had one line. Like smoked it through a tube, like a pipe thing. They call it chasing the dragon. And one line and I threw up, but I liked the feeling it gave me.
So even with that sort of feeling sick, you still
sort of... And I can't even describe it. It's like somebody giving you a big hug. I felt all warm inside. Everything went away. All my problems and everything went away. And a couple of days later, I was hooked.
And then that was it?
Yeah, and that was in 97.
Wow, gosh.
So on and off, it's nearly over 27 years now.
Wow, it's just robbed you of that whole sort of life.
You know what? Yeah, both my daughters have been through my addiction. My youngest daughter, she's with her dad, and my eldest daughter's with my mum. But if it wasn't for neither of those, both of them would be in care. Jail, been to jail 7 times.
Wow. So tell me about so you start, I guess the drug use gets more and more, and then so you're stealing more and more to be able to fund that habit. How did you go about sort of stealing? Like, how did you know where to go, what you could...
Do you know what? Even like now, I used to know what time the guards come on. I used to watch sort of, it doesn't happen straight away. There's many times I got caught, I got a fine. And I used to say, I was blasé to it. I said, I'm going to get a fine again. Then I got a community order, and then it started getting worse and worse. And I got my first jail sentence in 2002. And I went to Brock Hill when it was women's prison then, and it was horrible. There was no methadone or nothing. It was a bare back rattle.
Wow, so it's just cold turkey, that's it.
And just nothing else. I was climbing up. I was watching night screen TV for 3 weeks. I had no sleep. But it kept me out of jail for 10 years.
Because the fear of withdrawal.
To keep the cold out. It was horrible. Strip search, as soon as you got in there, it was vile.
Wow.
But 10 years I stayed out of jail. I'm not saying I stayed out of shoplifting, because I didn't. I just didn't get caught at that particular time. But yeah, I got worse and worse and worse and worse.
And so, so you went to prison. How long was that first sentence?
The first one, I got 4 months, so I'd done 2.
Yeah, okay.
It was the worst 2 months of my life. 2009, 2010, I went back to jail in 2011 3 times.
Right, okay.
It was just little sentences. And so to me, it was like a little break. I needed time away, do you know what I mean? And I went to Foster Hall, and all I was thinking was Foster Hall was going to be like Brock Hill.
Right.
It wasn't. I wasn't a street search when I went in there. It was totally different. It was like a holiday camp.
Oh, wow.
That's only I can describe it as. And people in there I knew. So it was like, oh,
really? So you like reunited with your friends,
and even like people that you used to graft with or at sea grafting. Everyone ended up sort of landing at the same time around Christmas times, always.
And could you get drugs in the prison? Could you carry on using?
You couldn't. The first time I went, I wasn't really... I knew people were having it sent in. They were having it sent in the soles of their shoes. That was people were sending in. They was putting the soles of the shoes in radios, stuff like that. But then they started obviously changing the way things were getting in, but it was still in there. I mean, I haven't been to jail since 2017, but the last time I went, it was absolutely ridiculous.
Just how much
is there were, and what the prices are, what people are charging for it. Like a £10 shot of crack out here would be £50 in there, so it'd be 1 pipe for £50.
Wow, gosh.
or 3 lines of heroin for £50. It'd be a £10 bag out here. It's astronomical.
How are people like, how do you have the money in prison to then be able to pay you for the drugs?
Well, what people do is they do bank transfers.
Right,
So they'll
okay.
phone whoever it is and can you put so-and-so in this person's account? There's phones in jail, I'm not gonna lie. It's like a proper business. It is like a business inside.
And it's a huge amount of money to be made.
They must do, because it's, you know, people have been caught with phones in there, but the next phone will come in, the SIM cards will come in. It's ridiculous. I ended up taking parcels in as well. It wasn't drugs. Mine was sort of tablets.
Right.
But you can, the tablet side of it, you can still get the same amount of money as you can with the drugs.
So what sort of tablets? Like prescriptions?
Subutex.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So people would snort a line of Subutex and they'd be flying. So yeah, a couple of times I'd done that because I knew I was getting sent down.
Wow.
It's just basically to survive.
Yeah.
You don't get, unless you've got not even a really good job in there, because I ended up working in the kitchens and that was the highest paid job in there. So it's like £18 a week, which is good for jail.
yeah. I was going to say otherwise.
You know what I mean?
Because it's
like,
so great.
If you didn't work, you're getting £2.50 a week. That can't buy anything on the canteen.
Gosh.
So it's just like you've got to survive in there, you have to do things like that or suffer.
Yeah. And so you've been to prison seven times.
Yeah.
And so typically how long were your sentences?
Because shoplifting's a petty crime. So the longest sentence I got was 12 months, which was Crown Court. I got sent to Crown Court for a boots shoplifting, which was over £3,000. I don't even remember doing it, really.
Wow. So just in one incident, you took £3,000 worth of stuff. And
when the judge sentenced me, he said, I'm sending you away for the sake of the shop stock over Christmas. I was like, okay. But I thought, I just couldn't believe it. It's just like, but at that particular time, I needed a break.
Yeah.
But again, in jail, as soon as you know you're released, a few days beforehand, your belly starts going because you know you're going back out to it. You know you can get it.
Yeah.
And you've got to pay them prices in there. So,
did you get any like rehabilitation, or did you do any like programs when you were in prison?
there's a carrot workers in jail.
Okay.
I mean, but you get things that put into your door, booklets, and it's just answering questions. And
right. So it's not sort of
every time you've got it,
meaningful.
It's the same booklet, same questions you're answering. And you're like, I've answered that already. You just put the same thing down. They give you a certificate at the end of it. So it's like you've done a work booklet. Well done. There you go.
Right, okay.
And cellular work, they used to call it.
So you're not doing that sort of in-depth
like programs together.
Yeah.
And you're not doing in-depth work about why you use drugs and stuff like that.
So how did you first come across the offender to rehabilitation programme?
I was first introduced to PC Too Good. I'd got arrested, and one of the officers that arrested me had mentioned me to PC Too Good. And I got home one evening after being out all day shoplifting, and my mum said, "You need to phone this police officer." And I went, "Oh, I haven't done anything."
Why would I call the police?
Said, "What have you done?" I kind of haven't done anything, and she'd go, "Just phone him. I don't know what he wants." So I thought,
that's brave of you to call.
I actually think at the particular point, because I'd done that much, there was a possibility he was going to arrest me.
Catching up with you, yeah.
So I phoned him, and I went to meet him at Erdington Police Station, and I can't even remember actually the conversation, but it was like, "How can I help you get free from addiction and get free from committing crime?" And the only thing that I could think of was rehab. So we looked through some rehabs, and it was like £3,000 a week.
Yeah.
I remember saying to him, "I'm a shoplifter. I'm supposed to grab £3,000."
Yeah.
But we eventually found Seasons. I went to in Warsaw, and I was lucky enough to be given a charity bed.
Okay.
But I had my assessment, and then I had to phone up every day to show how committed I was. Basically, they call it the check-in, so they can see how committed you are to actually go in there. And I think it was only a few weeks after that I got offered my place there.
And is that the first time you'd attempted rehab?
I'd never done rehab before.
Okay.
And that was what I mentioned to PC Too Good. I hadn't done it, and jail didn't work. Jail's a revolving door. It always will be.
Yeah.
And I needed for myself to do something different. So I thought the only other thing is it's either rehab or death.
Yeah. It got that bad that
I couldn't see no way out. I really couldn't. And Stuart too could used to get calls all the time. Lisa's been seen here, Lisa's been seen there, Lisa's been seen, Lisa's doing this, and it's just like, I think I was a bane of his life.
I think so, right. We're going to get you into rehab. Let's have a crack at this.
So I ended up going into Seasons, and I done 5.5 months there. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned about why addiction's an illness. It is an illness, basically, and there's reasons why you use drugs. And everyone has a pattern. It doesn't have to be drugs. Any addiction leads to the same thing. It's avoiding yourself that you need to fill.
Yeah.
So people have shopping habits, gambling. It's all you're getting that same fix.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really opened my eyes, and I was finally able to see why I did what I did.
Were you surprised by what you...
I was a kleptomaniac, to be fair.
Okay.
I couldn't go into a shop without taking something. But it was when I identified it was a buzz it gave me when I didn't have drugs was the same buzz when I used drugs.
Ah, okay.
It's so eye-opening.
Yeah,
it really is.
So were you surprised by what you were learning about yourself?
And I really... When I first went, because I've been to rehab twice, the first time I went in there, I went in thinking it was like jail. And they used to say to me, well, you're the ice queen. I wouldn't cry. You know, I was just stone. Like, you can't tell me nothing. I know everything.
Because all your barriers
are up.
And,
basically. And they used to say, like, we'll break you down. We will break you down. And then when they did, and it was just like, I couldn't stop crying. And I basically had to become vulnerable. Until I allowed that to happen, I wouldn't learn and I wouldn't be able to get better. So,
and it's really, it's a brave step, isn't it? I think, to put yourself in that position where you are vulnerable, where you're reflecting on, you know, not only the things that you've done, but perhaps some of the traumas that you've experienced.
And again, what you've done to people as well. My mum's, luckily enough, she stuck by me. I mean, she used to put a lock on her bedroom door in her own house, because I would literally take anything. The shops, I just didn't care. I'd barge past them. If I wanted something, I was getting it, no matter what.
Wow, gosh. Do you recognise yourself, sort of looking back, you know, from yourself now?
I must have been horrible, like, not horrible, because I'm not a horrible person, but how drugs makes you the person you are when you take them is not the person you are when you don't take them. But I mean, I could shoplift in about a minute. I'd go in the shop, get what I was getting, gone. And I remember being interviewed, and I think it was 37 seconds. I was in the shop, got what I wanted, and I was out.
Wow, gosh, because I suppose, I mean,
And I'm going, I haven't took nothing. How do you think I'll take something in 37 seconds? And like, you can see what I'm doing.
But I suppose with that level of experience that you were professional, you know, you were so skilled over time in knowing sort of how to evade detection. And did you get to the point where you didn't even care if people saw you? Like, you were just so blatant in and out and just...
Oh, yeah. I think the more blatant you are, the less they think you're doing anything.
Right, okay.
Not so much now, because obviously there's not that many people doing it, but you've got people that are shopping and they're watching you do it, and they're like, oh, and they're going to and I'm like, mind your own business, this has nothing to do with you. Okay. You're not going to get your shopping for free just because you're grassing me up. You know what I mean?
Would you say that to people?
I have said it to people before, and, you know, I would go out with the alarms blaring. And wait for some. I'd close my eyes, walk through the alarm, thinking, please don't go off. And it'd go off, and it'd still carry on.
And
even
then
if I got picked up, I'd try and get away. But I never used to fight physically. If I was caught, I was caught.
So if you were caught, you would just hand everything back over?
Nowadays, I think it's over £200 before the police come. So you just hand it back and they ban you from the shop. But previously, you get gripped up by the security, dragged back in. I've been booted in my leg. I've been tripped over by security, and it's.
What would you do in that scenario? Like, would you fight back or?
Well, the one time that I'd only walked past the shop, I hadn't even been in the shop that day, but I had been in there every day.
Right, yeah.
For about 3 months. And he seen me walk past and he came running out, and I was on my phone and he tripped me over, booted me in my leg, took my phone and ran back to the shop. I'm known everywhere. I'm really known. I have to sort of sneak. I don't do it anymore, but when I was doing it, I used to sneak in and I'd hide and I'd wait for it to go round another aisle, and I'd go and I knew where everything was in the shops I was going to, so I knew straight in and straight out and gone.
And so, so now, so how long has it been that you've been clean for now?
Well, I've got the Bufidal injection. I had the Bufidal injection, which is another new thing.
Tell us about that, yeah.
I've had methadone, I've had Subutex in the past. I've used on methadone. That's a cop-out to me. It just gets you up in the morning to go and do what you're doing.
Right.
Subutex, you can still use on it.
Okay.
You can. Unless you have the 8mm block. That 8mm's got a 4 blocker in. But I was clever in what I did, because I asked for 2 mils, because I said the 8mm give me a headache. It wasn't, so I could still use on it.
Right. So the Subutex that blocks the
Subutex blocks the heroin.
How effective
if you use heroin on top of Subutex, it brings out a full-blown rattle, but only if it's got the 4 blocker in it.
Right, okay. So it'll actually make you feel really unwell. So the idea is then you'll start thinking it's not worth doing it.
Yeah, and basically it'll throw you into a full-blown rattle that you're going to use anyway.
Yeah.
So when I got clean from the rehab the first time, I was 14 months clean, and I met somebody through the NA rooms, and we ended up getting together, and I got pregnant, and I had a little girl, and I relapsed. He relapsed first, and I stayed clean, and then he went into rehab, got clean, but never came back. So then I just started using then, and I was still lying to everybody. I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me, blah, blah, blah. Then social services got involved, and I had to have a hair strand test. I had to have some sort of test.
Okay, yeah.
And I've been identified as committing a crime on CCTV, so PC2 Good now gets involved again.
Yeah.
And I ended up going back to rehab. I put my daughter into voluntary foster care, and me and my partner go back to rehab, but separate ones. And I stayed for 3 months. Completed it, but I was totally different this time. My mindset was different because I'd already gone through it, and I already sort of knew what I needed to do. It was putting it into action. So the second time round, I went back to seasons again. I felt so embarrassed going back. But
really, why is that?
Because obviously I'd relapsed. There was people in there that worked there that I'd been in rehab with.
Right. Okay.
And it was like, I've relapsed and I'm back down there again.
Right.
And, you're working here and all that. But it's one of them.
And maybe that helps in a way, doesn't it? Because you then, you've got that extra impetus.
Exactly.
That I need to prove myself that I can do this again.
I wanted to get clean to get my daughter back.
Yeah. And so where's your daughter now?
She's with her dad currently at the moment,
Because I remember when I first met you, you were pregnant with your little girl.
So I met back up with Stuart. I went on Espinal, which is like Subutex, but it's I don't even know what it is, but it is like Subutex.
Okay.
And I was on that for two weeks, and Stuart mentioned the Bufidal injection, and I'd never heard of it. I've been around drug services for over 20 years.
It's quite a new drug, isn't it?
Been around a couple of years apparently, and it really. I really wanted to see what it was about, because I hadn't heard anything about it, but what I'd read up on it, it was like, this can't possibly work, it can't.
What does it promise to do then?
Basically, you have this injection once a month, you don't rattle, you wake up normal, you start eating again.
Wow,
and
gosh.
You basically living your life you was when you weren't taking drugs.
And so does it tackle the cravings as well?
Since I've had the injection, I haven't used heroin.
Wow.
And I don't even think about it. I can't. It's just mad how it works.
It just sounds like the magic bullet, doesn't it? Wow.
And I said to Stuart, like, it needs to, that needs to be introduced in prison. For when the people are being released, if they've had that a couple of weeks before.
Yeah. It just gets them off to that start, doesn't it, on the right?
Exactly. And then I think the crime rate would drop dramatically.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like a magic
Yeah.
ingredient that hasn't been there. So
Wow, that sounds really positive.
Yeah.
And so is the idea that you would then be on it for like the rest of your
can come
life?
off it when you want.
Okay.
And you don't rattle. This is what I'm saying. It didn't make sense to me how, if I'd been using and I was put on this injection, I could stop at any time and not withdraw. I couldn't understand it, because you can't just come off methadone like that.
Yeah, you've got to really ease.
And it's just mad. I don't have to go to the chemist every day to pick my script up, to have it in the chemist in front of people. You know, it's embarrassing, man.
How, like, did you find the methadone helped when you were taking that?
It does help, but it don't help, because the methadone withdrawal is worse than heroin.
Okay.
It gets into your bones.
Right.
It's just horrible. And you start, when you don't have the methadone after a few days, you start rattling for that as well. So if you're not on a script, you're looking for money to score methadone and money to score drugs. It's horrible. I don't know why it was invented, because it's just, the help's out there. Even if you're unsure about whether, nobody wants to be on drugs. Well, I wouldn't have thought so anyway, because the life it gives you is, you're not living, you're just existing. But there's the help's out there, and you know, it's not all about, when you start to learn about yourself and you see the pattern about where it leads you. My pattern was money, men and drugs.
If there's one bit of advice you could give yourself, your 18-year-old self, you know, you've got your hairdressing job and you just...
that first line of heroin, I would never have. But
it's that, isn't it? It's that moment.
It panned out anyway. So it was either go that way or that way. No, I was rebellious anyway. So it was more than likely that I would have ended up somehow in that mixture. Whether it be that time, probably not, but
maybe at some point down the road. Wow, I mean, you've done so well, though. Yeah, congratulations. It's so good to hear, you know, the journey. The journey you've been through is absolutely horrendous, but to hear you know, and looking so well, and that's really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.